"We've decided to move in next week," my son said. And I remember thinking how strange it was that a sentence like that could land so softly. He set his fork down as if he'd commented on the weather. Celine smiled across the table, one hand resting on her stomach. "We'll convert the guest room into the nursery," she added. "It's the perfect size." I wiped my mouth with my napkin and folded it once before speaking. "That's going to be tough." The new owners asked for the keys by Friday. For a moment, no one breathed. The hum of the refrigerator grew loud enough to feel physical. Jonah blinked at me, slow and confused, like I'd spoken in a language he almost understood, but not quite. Celine's smile stayed in place a second too long, then slipped. "You sold the house?" Jonah asked. "I did," I said. My voice surprised me. It was steady. "Cash offer. They close this week." Celine's fork hit her plate with a sharp click. "But you never said anything." "No one asked," I replied. "Just like no one asked if I was okay with you moving in." Jonah leaned back in his chair, his jaw tightening. "We thought this was the plan. Family supporting family." I looked at my plate. The food had already gone cold. Family doesn't make plans in secret and assume ownership of what isn't theirs. Celine's eyes flicked toward the hallway, toward the guest room door. I followed her glance without turning my head. Just yesterday, I'd moved a box she'd tucked behind the couch, labeled in her careful handwriting, "Baby clothes." I'd put it back exactly where I found it. I'd said nothing then, the same way I'd said nothing about the contractor who showed up to measure the porch or the new towels folded into my linen closet, like they'd always belonged there. They thought they were being subtle. They thought I wasn't paying attention. But I had been watching every small adjustment, every quiet claim. By the time Jonah laughed and said, "You're serious," I had already lived through this conversation a dozen times in my head. "I am," I said. The silence that followed wasn't shock anymore. It was calculation. I could see it moving behind their eyes, the rapid search for a way around what I'd done. And as I sat there with my hands folded in my lap, I realized this dinner hadn't started tonight. It had started weeks ago in the small moments they thought I didn't notice. It didn't happen all at once. First, it was the plastic bin in the hallway closet wedged between my winter scarves and the board games I kept for rainy days. The label written in Celine's tidy handwriting said, 0 to 6 months. Books plus bottles. I moved it gently aside, pretending I hadn't seen it. That day, I just needed a scarf. I didn't ask. Neither did they. Then came the towels. "Do you have any extras?" Celine asked one morning, barefoot in my kitchen, swirling oat milk into her coffee, like it was her 10th morning here, not her 3rd visit this month. "Not for us, for the baby. You know bath time gets messy." She said it with a laugh, already opening drawers. I remember pausing, hand still damp from washing dishes. "What baby?" I asked. "Oh, eventually," she said lightly. Her smile was practiced. She didn't look up. Eventually came sooner than I expected. A man knocked on the door one afternoon while I was pruning the camellias, paint-splattered boots, clipboard in hand. "Here to measure the back porch," he said friendly. "Jonah told me you'd be home?" I stared at him longer than I should have. "I didn't call for a quote," I said flatly. His smile faltered. "Oh, I was told sorry. Maybe I have the wrong address." He didn't. I told him he couldn't come in. I didn't need to raise my voice. The confusion on his face was enough. That night, Jonah didn't mention it. Neither did I. But something in the air between us shifted. They weren't moving in. They were already moving through. The thermostat had been adjusted. Their groceries had found their way into my fridge. Her prenatal vitamins sat on my windowsill beside the rosemary. Their lives had started expanding into mine, inch by inch, without a single conversation. Just placement. One morning, I reached for my red mug and found it had been replaced by one that read, "World's Best Nana." Still new. still with the tag. They hadn't given it to me. They'd just set it there like an expectation. I washed it, dried it, and tucked it into the back of the cabinet. That afternoon, I cleared my browser history and bookmarked 3 local listings. 2 of them had small balconies. One was near a bookstore I liked. I wasn't in a rush, but I had crossed the line in my mind. And once I crossed it, I stopped pretending I hadn't seen where things were going. I stopped by on a Wednesday with a container of soup balanced against my hip. Jonah had texted that Celine wasn't feeling well, and old habits are hard to break. When someone says they're sick, I cook. The front door was unlocked. I knocked once and let myself in, calling their names softly, out of courtesy more than necessity. No answer. I stepped into the kitchen and heard Celine before she saw me. Her voice carried easily, bright, and confident in a way it never was when she spoke to me directly. "She won't say no," she said into the phone. "She can't live alone. It'll feel natural once we're in. We'll just shift things around slowly." I stood still, the soup growing heavy in my hands. "The house is basically ours already," she added, followed by a light laugh. "Jonah knows it. She knows it too. She just needs time to catch up." There was a pause while the person on the other end spoke. Celine leaned against the counter, smiling at something I couldn't hear. "No, she won't fight it," she said. "She's tired. This is better for everyone." The word tired settled into me like a diagnosis. I didn't clear my throat. I didn't step forward. I didn't give her the chance to reshape her face into politeness. I set the container on the edge of the table as quietly as I could. The lid clicked softly against the wood. She didn't notice. I walked back out the way I came, closing the door without a sound. My hands were steady as I reached my car. I sat behind the wheel for a full minute, staring at the house. My house. The curtains I'd sewn. The porch Jonah learned to ride a bike on. The camellias blooming along the fence. Tired. I took my phone from my purse and scrolled to a number I'd saved weeks earlier, back when the first boxes appeared in my closet, and I'd told myself I was just being practical. Marcy answered on the second ring. "Hello, this is Merelda Thorne," I said. "If the buyers from Eugene are still interested, I'm ready to move forward." There was a brief silence, the kind professionals use when they're recalculating timelines. "They are," she said. "Are you sure?" "Yes," I replied, watching the front door of my house like it might open and pull me back inside. "I want to sell." Marcy greeted me with that same calm professionalism she'd had the first time we met. The office hadn't changed, neutral walls, polite decor, coffee machine humming in the corner. She offered me tea, but I declined. I wasn't there to linger. "The buyers from Eugene are still interested," she said, flipping open a manila folder. "They loved the porch. Said it reminded them of his grandmother's." I nodded. I didn't need to know why they wanted it. I just needed to let it go. The offer still stands. Cash. No contingencies. They can close in 21 days, maybe sooner. That works. Marcy watched me for a beat, her pen hovering over a tab. "You don't have to explain anything," she said gently. "But if you want to, I don't," I said. "I'm ready." She slid the paperwork forward. "Sign here. Initial here. Date here." Each mark I made felt like pulling up roots I hadn't realized were still alive. Not painful, just precise. I'd spent years in emergency rooms making decisions in seconds. This was slower, but no less final. When I got to the last page, I paused. Not out of doubt, just to take in the quiet. The kind that comes before something ends. I signed. Marcy smiled, tucking the documents back into the folder. "I'll call them this afternoon. You'll get confirmation by tomorrow." "Thank you," I said. "Do you have a place in mind yet?" "Not yet, but I'm looking." I left the office without fanfare. No champagne, no photos with sold signs, just the soft click of the glass door behind me and the crisp weight of the copy she'd handed me still warm from the printer. On the drive home, I didn't turn on the radio. The silence was clean. It made space. When I pulled into the driveway, Jonah's car wasn't there. Good. I didn't want to answer questions I wasn't going to entertain. I went inside, folded laundry-made tea, and sliced an apple with quiet hands. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Not because I was hiding it, but because the decision didn't need an audience. It didn't need a conversation. I was done explaining choices that had already been made. By Sunday, I knew exactly what I would say when the time came. The roast was in the oven by 4. Same as always. Green beans with garlic salt. Soft rolls from the bakery Celine liked. I brewed decaf even though I preferred the bite of regular. No need to raise eyebrows. Let them feel at home one last time. They arrived on schedule. Jonah kissed my cheek, and Celine hugged me with one arm, while the other cradled her belly like a prop in a play that had already opened without me. They brought a pie. Store-bought, but wrapped with a ribbon, a detail that made the gesture feel like it came from someone else's instruction. We ate slowly, talked about the weather, a new grocery store opening across town. I nodded in the right places, past the rolls, laughed once or twice, though I don't remember at what. Then Jonah cleared his throat and pushed his plate slightly forward. We've been thinking. He began glancing at Celine, who gave a small, supportive smile. With the baby coming, it just makes sense to stay here for a while. It'll be easier on everyone. I didn't respond right away. Just reached beneath my placemat and brought out the envelope I had tucked there. Thick ivory paper. I slid it to the center of the table right between the salt and the butter dish. That's going to be tough. The new owners asked for the keys by Friday, I said. My voice was even, not cold. Just done. Jonah blinked at it, then at me. You... What? Celine's hand froze over her glass. Her lips parted, but no words came. Her face had gone 2 shades paler. A couple from Eugene, I said. Cash offer. They're excited about the backyard. Jonah leaned forward like he could rewind the moment if he just moved fast enough. You didn't even tell us. You didn't ask, I replied. Just like you didn't ask if I wanted roommates. His jaw clenched. We're your family. Yes, I said softly. And family doesn't make plans behind each other's backs. Celine finally found her voice. So, where are you going? I have that covered. I stood and began clearing plates, moving slowly, not rushing the rhythm of it. Jonah didn't speak again. Celine sat very still, her fork resting untouched beside the half-eaten pie. They stayed long enough to be polite, then left without dessert. The house was quiet when the door shut behind them, and I didn't miss their voices. By morning, the noise had begun. Screenshots from group chats. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly had opinions. Posts went up with filtered photos of Celine looking angelic and tired, cradling her belly like a fragile promise. The caption read, "She refused to let her pregnant daughter-in-law move in. Family should be there for each other." They made it sound like I'd locked the doors on Christmas morning. No one mentioned the bins in my closets, the baby monitor hidden in my guest room, the contractor I never called. I wasn't angry, just tired. Jonah's message came just after noon. You embarrassed us. No greeting, no question. Just that. As if I'd disrupted a story he had already written. I put the phone face down. Then came the doorbell. I almost didn't answer, thinking it might be someone else with judgment in their hands disguised as concern. But when I opened it, Trudy from next door stood there with a cup carrier and a brown paper bag. I brought caffeine, she said, holding it out. And lemon scones? I reached for my wallet. You didn't have to. I didn't, she said, stepping back. But I wanted to. Her voice dropped, soft but pointed. I heard what they're saying, but I also remember who paid for their trip to Maui. That stopped me. Trudy nodded toward the house behind her. Celine left the confirmation page in my printer last year by mistake. Your name was on it. I almost laughed. Not out of amusement, just the sheer absurdity of it. She reached out and gave my arm a light squeeze. You're not cruel, she said. You're just done letting people decide for you. I held on to that sentence like a lifeline after she left. I poured the coffee into my own mug, the red one they'd tried to replace. Sat at the table, steam rising. The fridge buzzed gently in the background. I didn't check my phone, didn't scroll. Let the world spin on without explanation from me. They could twist the story however they liked. I knew the truth. And I knew what I would do if Jonah came back again. Jonah showed up without warning. No Celine this time. No pie. Just him standing on the porch, like he hadn't lit a match to the bridge between us only days before. I opened the door, but didn't invite him in right away. He shifted on his feet, hands in his pockets, waiting. I've been thinking, he said. We were all emotional the other night. Maybe there's a middle ground here. I stepped aside, let him in. He sat at the kitchen table like it still belonged to him. We found a place, he said. A starter home. Not far, but we need help with the loan. His voice softened. If you could just co-sign, it would mean a lot. You'd be helping your grandchild. I didn't respond. Just went to the drawer, pulled out the printed spreadsheet I'd kept ready. I laid it flat in front of him. He looked down, confused. Rows and rows all labeled tuition, emergency room copay when Celine broke her ankle, the $8,000 wire transfer for their first apartment, the down payment I never got back, the boutique that opened and closed in 3 months, gas, groceries, cell phone bills, quiet, forgettable things with dollar signs. I kept track, I said. Not because I planned to use it, but because it mattered. He read through it slowly, then leaned back in the chair. That's not the same, he said, almost snapping. This is about the future. No, I said, folding my hands. This is about the pattern. You thought before had no limit. He looked down again, but didn't touch the paper. I didn't come here to fight, he muttered. Good, I said, standing. Because I'm not fighting. I'm finished explaining. He didn't storm out. He didn't raise his voice. He just looked confused, like the rules had shifted and no one told him. But they had. He just didn't listen. After he left, I refolded the spreadsheet and placed it back in the drawer. Some things are worth keeping, not out of resentment, but memory. The movers were scheduled. The apartment was smaller than the house, but it didn't feel that way. The rooms were square and clean, the floor didn't slope near the hallway, and the windows opened without sticking. I hadn't realized how many little things I'd learned to tolerate until they were gone. I didn't bring much. My books came first, stacked neatly in labeled boxes, each one like an old friend. Then the red mug, the one they tried to replace without asking. I placed it in the cabinet above the sink, right side up. A framed photo of Jonah at 7. He was missing a front tooth and smiling with his whole face. I set it on the dresser beside my husband's old reading lamp, the one with the cracked base he refused to throw out. I'd kept it all these years. It still worked fine. That was enough. The movers were quick, professional. They didn't ask questions. I liked that. By the afternoon, I was unpacking towels into drawers that no one else would fill. The second bedroom was still empty, but I didn't feel rushed to decide what it would become. For now, it was space. My space. Later that evening, a message came from the couple in Eugene. A photo. First 2 people standing in front of the house, grinning beside the mailbox I had painted pale green last spring. Behind them, the camellia bushes I'd almost pulled out during a bad week were bright with color. We kept your camellias. They're blooming. I stared at the image for a long time before typing my reply. Watch the porch. It creaks after rain. No explanation. No nostalgia. Just care. It wasn't mine anymore, but I still wanted it to be okay. That night I brewed a fresh cup of coffee, real coffee, and drank it on the small balcony outside the living room. Below me, the street was quiet. No footsteps upstairs, no distant voices behind doors. Just wind and leaves, and the steady rhythm of my own breath. I thought about the guest room, about the house that wasn't mine anymore, about how long I'd been holding things together out of duty, and how, for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a guest in my own life. 3 months passed before I set the table for guests again. This time it wasn't family. It was Trudy from next door, her niece Harper, visiting for the summer Gloria from the end of the hall, and an old colleague from the elementary school, where I used to teach Lucinda, who still called me Miss Thorne out of habit. I roasted a chicken, garlic potatoes, a berry crumble cooling on the counter. Nothing extravagant. Just food made with care, served without expectation. They brought flowers in a mason jar and a bottle of sparkling cider. Trudy came early to help, but I told her to sit. "I've got it," I said. And I did. There was no performance to uphold no edge of judgment in the room. We ate slowly, laughing over stories of bad dates, road trip disasters, and the time Lucinda got locked inside the school supply closet for over an hour because no one knew she was working late. There was no tension in the air, no silent countdown to the next favor someone would ask. No one needed anything from me but my presence. Harper, elbows on the table and chin in her hands, looked at me toward the end of the meal. "Do you miss your old house?" she asked, curious but gentle. I smiled. "The house was lovely," I said, truthfully. "Big kitchen, strong bones, a yard full of camellias." I let the pause settle around us, warm and full. "But the woman who lived there," I added, "she was always tired." I didn't say more than that. I didn't have to. Trudy gave a small nod, her hand brushing mine for a second. Lucinda poured more cider. Harper looked thoughtful and didn't press. Later, after the plates were cleared and the others had gone, I sat by the open window with my legs tucked beneath me and the red mug warm in my hands. I looked around, not at the furniture or the walls, but at the stillness that had returned. No one had asked to stay. No one had hinted. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I had to give anything away just to be loved. Sometimes the hardest word a woman can say is no, especially when it's to her own family. But setting boundaries doesn't make you unkind. It makes you honest. Every woman has the right to her own space, her own peace, and her own life, no matter how much she's given to others. Privacy isn't a luxury, it's a basic form of respect. And love, real love, is never something you should have to buy or earn. It's not a transaction. It should never come with conditions, guilt, or silent expectations. If someone only shows up when they need something that's not love, it's convenience. So to any woman out there holding her breath, afraid to take up space, this is your reminder that you are allowed to choose yourself. May your life be filled with peace, dignity, and the kind of love that asks nothing in return.